What happens when a band of battle-hardened mountaineers feel overlooked and underrepresented by their city-living government? This question finds its answer nestled here in the Appalachian Mountains in the late 18th century. This is a story of regional independence of a self-reliant people, a conflict between Tennessee's first governor and my seventh great-grandfather, and of battle and bloodshed. Join me as I investigate the history of the lost state of Franklin. Following the American Revolution, the boundaries of the young United States looked very different than they do today. The territory of the United States had been extended to the Mississippi River, and the land of many states spanned from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River. North Carolina was an example of this, but few North Carolinians lived on the western side of the Appalachian Mountains. Many of these Appalachian men had been pivotal patriots in the American Revolution, and specifically in the Battle of Kings Mountain. In 1783, the Land Grab Act was passed in an attempt to garner funds for debts accrued by North Carolina during the Revolution. The land spanning from the Appalachians to the Mississippi River went up for sale, and 4 million acres were sold. Less than a year later, Congress enacted the Ordinance of 1784.
So in 1784, in the early part of that year, North Carolina ceded their western lands, which is now Tennessee today, to the United States government, and in that brief time is when the state of Franklin formed their own government. Shortly thereafter, though, North Carolina rescinded that and took back their western lands. So you actually had two governments that were operating here in each of the counties in this area.
This state of Franklin that formed was an attempt by those in the Appalachian region to establish a representative government that could serve the needs they felt were not being met by the North Carolina government. The Americans west of the Appalachians still faced Cherokee Indian attacks that continued from the Revolutionary War with little support from North Carolina due to their strained financial state. Additionally, the distance between the North Carolina government and the people in this region left the Appalachian people feeling disgruntled about taxation and their access to the courts. Dave Foster wrote that all of this, quote, unduly burdened the western pioneer settlers. Had they not fought the recent war with England for a similar cause? In their minds, the mother state had deserted the Over-Mountain men, the troop who had gained the stunning victory at Kings Mountain and thereby brought about a crucial turning point in the Revolutionary War. It was in the town of Jonesboro, on August 23, 1784, that delegates gathered and declared that the three western counties of North Carolina were to now be independent of the state of North Carolina. This declaration was unanimously approved. Reluctantly, the well-known patriot John Sevier accepted the governorship of the new state of Franklin. He soon became the bastion of the Franklinite movement. After assembling in Jonesboro for some time, the leaders of the Franklinite movement named Greenville the new capital of the state of Franklin, and it was here on this site in December of 1785 that the first legislature took place. The state of Franklin was busy throughout the entirety of its short-lived existence. Courts were opened, counties were annexed, negotiations were made with Native Americans, and the Franklinites even petitioned Congress for statehood, though unsuccessfully. Despite this, from its earliest moments, Franklin was never without opposition. If John Sevier embodied the Franklinite movement, Colonel John Tipton was the chief example of North Carolina loyalism.
This area was actually purchased by Colonel John Tipton in 1784. He built a log cabin here on the property, which still stands today. When he first moved here is when the state of Franklin was forming. He became a representative for Washington County in the Constitutional Conventions, voted against the state of Franklin Constitution, and eventually became a North Carolina senator and a colonel for the North Carolina militia.
John Haywood summarized the feud between Sevier and Tipton by saying, quote, the state of Franklin held superior courts twice in each year in Jonesboro. Colonel Tipton openly refused obedience to the new government. There arose a deadly hatred between him and Sevier. and each endeavored by all means in his power to strengthen his party against the other. Tipton held courts under the authority of North Carolina, 10 miles above Jonesboro.
The two men were some of the best well-known men in this area, known as patriots. So the two butted heads over the two, which would be, is North Carolina the rule of law for Washington County, or was it going to be the state of Franklin? Which the two of them eventually got into a fist fight in the streets of Jonesboro because of it.
The feud between Sevier and Tipton would not end here. In fact, the conflict between these men, as well as the larger divide that they represented, would find its climax in the year of 1788.
So the Battle of the State of Franklin happened here at Tipton Haynes State Historic Site, February 27th through February 29th, 1788. The battle occurs because there's an order from North Carolina that comes to Washington County, North Carolina, which states that the property of John Sevier was to be taken for owed back taxes. That property was brought here by the Sheriff Jonathan Pugh to Colonel Tipton's property. John Sevier hears about this, raises the State of Franklin militia, and he brings them here on February 27th, where he lays siege to Colonel Tipton's property. There is a brief skirmish that is actually done on February 27th, where reinforcements were trying to get to Colonel Tipton in his property. They were brushed aside by the State of Franklin militia. Eventually, some reinforcements from Sullivan County arrive on February 29th. They are not seen as it was a heavy snowstorm happening that day. So they reach Colonel Tipton in his cabin, and the first shot, depending on whose side you're on, is fired. And then a 10-minute battle is actually what ensues. 3 men are mortally wounded. The Sheriff Jonathan Pugh is one of those, and he dies a few days after the battle. John Sevier retreats back to Jonesboro, and this is his only military loss in his career.
Following the Battle of the State of Franklin, John Sevier was charged with treason for leading his rebellion against the state of North Carolina. Colonel John Tipton eventually arrested Sevier that same year, though he was freed. In 1789, the state of Franklin dissolved and assimilated back into the state of North Carolina. Both Sevier and Tipton remained involved in North Carolina politics into the future. In 1796, Colonel Tipton served in the Tennessee Constitutional Convention, and upon its admission to the Union as the 16th state, Sevier became governor and Tipton acted in local politics. These two men and the attempted state of Franklin played a pivotal role in the development of the state of Tennessee and the young United States.